What's up, Instagram Live? Nice to see you all. Happy Sunday. Hopefully you're doing something amazing today that you love. Now, as you are tuning in, I would love to know, number one, where you're tuning in from. Number two, love to know three things you're grateful for out there in Instagram world. What is up, friends? Nice to see you. Welcome. Today's topic, and I'll have to go check to see what day we're on. I think this is day number 90. Tampa, Florida. What's up from Azusa, California? Welcome. Hello from Argentina. Isaac, what's up, buddy? Welcome. Hello. So I'll give it just a few more minutes so people can join us. What's up from Los Angeles? Hello from India. I think that's Greece in the house right there. Okay, we're going to get started from Oman. Welcome. We're going to get started real quick. And today's topic is one of my favorites. My wife and I, every Sunday, spend time, either right when we wake up or this morning it was on the drive back home, we spend time discussing what is the number one lesson we learned this week about relationships. And so we always share the most important lesson or our top lessons we learned this week about the topic of relationships. And so this week, one of the shares I had was the concept of there's situations that happen, and then there's the story in our mind about the situation that's happening. And what I found is the situation that happens can be painful, can be frustrating, can be upsetting, can be hurtful, or whatever you want to call it. But in reality, what really messes with us mentally or emotionally, it is the story we have about the situation. And then so I looked at the concept of the story, and I said, well, this is really interesting. I said, let's break apart a story. What are the components of a story in this case? And there was really three pieces of a story. Because if you take a situation that's frustrating you or upsetting you in some way, or has in the past upset you, and you look at the situation, there's the first part of the story, which is the actual facts of what happened. For instance, someone walked by, and let's use a simple example, and punched me in the shoulder. And it's like, ow, that hurt. So the first part of the story is the fact that their hand hit my shoulder and ow, it hurt. That's it. There's the fact. That's what happened. This went here, caused ooh. That's it. That's the whole facts. Now, there's a second part of the story, which is the emotion I'm about to link to it. Because, is it true that someone could walk up to you in your life? There's somebody in your life that could walk up to you and go, pow, and you go, hey! And the emotion you link to it is like, hey, you're excited, it's good to see you, pal, oh man, it's been such a long time. Is it true, in the comment section real quick, is it true that someone could walk up to you and boop, go like this, and you're like, hey, and you're totally excited because that's your best friend and, you guys are totally hanging out. So, Igor says, my best friend, for example. Exactly. Your best friend walks in the room and goes, hey, and you're like, hey, pal, nice to see you. Hey, awesome, yeah. He says we hit each other all the time. Okay, cool. Now, on the other hand, is there a chance the exact same person could walk into the room, do the exact same thing? Same person, walk up to the room, do the exact same thing with the same look on their face, the same energy, and they're like, nice to see you. And you go, Hey, what would you do that for? Why? Ow! What's wrong with you? Is it possible that the same person could do the same thing, and in a different moment you're going, ow, and one moment you're like, hey? Now, what's the difference? Your emotion being tied to it is one piece of this. So there's a fact, then there's an emotion. And the emotion could either be, hey, I'm excited, or ow, why would you do that? Either hey or ow. These emotions are totally based on how you're feeling in the moment. Now, what I mean by how you're feeling is, are you your best self? Are you your average self? Or are you your worst self? Now, when I mean, so I said exactly, when I was in a bad state, meaning your worst self, someone hits you, you're like, ow, what's wrong with you? Why would you hit me? You're in your best state. You're feeling good. You're fired up. The game's on. You're hanging with your buds, your friends, whatever. Someone walks in, hits you. You're like, hey, you're totally excited. You're like, hey, bud. That concept. And so it really is being filtered on what state you're in. State meaning, are you well slept, well fed, meditated? Did you work out? Are you your best self? Are you the happiest, healthiest, strongest, most fulfilled version of yourself? And there's a third piece to this that we'll get to, but this is part two. Part one is the facts. What happened? Something went here, that's the fact. And it caused a feeling, sensation. Second piece is the emotion. Depending on if you're at your best, average, or worst, depends on the emotion you link up to it. So the emotion that you're connecting to this little fact. So it hits and you're like, hey, or it hits, you're like, ow. That's the emotion. And then the third piece here is your filters. Now, your filters, there's this really great picture online where from the side, it looks like the guy is flipping someone off. And from the front, it looks like he's going, hey. And what's funny is the perception, the angle that you're looking at this looks like either he's flipping someone off or he's saying, hey. And it's just like, wow. Depending on the side you're looking at it from is determining your perception of what's going on. This is one filter. What's the angle you're looking at the situation from? Are you looking at it from this side or this side or this side or this side or this side? How are you looking at the situation? This is one filter. Another filter is your triggers. What else has happened like this in your lifetime that's being triggered right now in your nervous system, and your brain's going, I know what this leads to. And it's causing a chain reaction of emotions in your body that literally has nothing to do with this exact moment, but instead has everything to do with what happened back then, over there, way over there, whatever. It's some other situation that you're reacting to, and that filter is now causing you to see this and go, whoa, I know what this means. And so this next piece is the filters, and what we're talking about is the perception, the angle in which you're looking at it, and let me see if I can find the image real quick, because it's a great image. Let's see, Let me see if I can find it real quick. Here it is. Where's the other side of this? There you go. So this is the image I was talking about. So from this angle, look at what's going on here. I mean, this guy is clearly flipping someone off. Now from this angle, not so much. So depending on where you're standing in the situation is causing you to see it completely differently than if you were standing in a different place. Second, the triggers, the things that have happened in your past that are causing you to go, I know what this means, and instantly go through what you think it means instead of what it actually is happening right now. And then finally, the reference points. Who you have around you that's giving you a reference point to what to pay attention to. What are you referencing? What information are you referencing in the back of your mind that you're pulling up? Now, what's wild is when you take apart any situation that's going on, and thank you for all the little hearts that people are tossing my way over here in the little corner. I see those. If you take away and you separate a story, now a situation happens, boom, and then a story is created. A story is created. Someone says, I'm your biggest fan. And I'm yours. I'm your biggest fan as well. So someone says, something happens. And instantly my mind creates a story. And we're going to say a story is compiled of 3 parts. 3 pieces of the story. Number 1, the facts. This went here and caused ow. That's the facts. That's just 1, 2, 3, what happened. No emotion, no story about just 1, 2, 3, the facts. So story's first piece is the facts. Second piece is the emotion. Now, if I'm in my best self, well slept, well fed, worked out, meditated, best self, feeling great, someone hits me and I'm like, hey, nice to see you. How you doing, pal? Now, if I'm my worst self, I didn't sleep, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm frustrated, I haven't worked out, I haven't meditated, I'm literally exhausted. Someone walks up and goes, hey, and I go, ow, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? What is wrong with you? And this concept it's determined on how my state is doing. Because I'm in my best, it's a fun gesture. If I'm in my worst, this is horrible. Screw you. What's wrong with you? You're hurting me. And then the final piece is what I'm calling the filters, which is the triggers, meaning all the past experiences when anyone's ever done this before, and your brain's going, I know what this means. It's not. It's not reality. It's what happened back then that's filtering into your mind. Second piece is the reference points. What information are you referencing as it's coming up? What information are you pulling from? Is it something you read, something you listened to? Is it a video you watched? Is it a course you attended or in university or something? Or a friend told you something and that's what you're referencing? So what you're referencing is causing a piece of this. And then the next piece is triggers, reference points, and perceptions. So if you were to take anything that frustrates you and you pull it apart, there's a great scene in the movie's Avengers where the Hulk is trying to get something from this lady and she hits him and she knocks kind of the spirit out of the body. And in that moment, you see one element get separated into 2 different pieces. That's what happens through meditation. You realize you are not this. Instead, you become an observer of this and you go, wow, that's really interesting. Because someone says, I'm freaking out right now, and then you step out and you go, it's interesting. That's an interesting choice to freak out over this situation. Well, what is the number 1, facts of what happened? Number 2, what are the emotions? Am I at my best, average, or worst in how I'm filtering this? And then 3, am I responding to the reality or am I responding to a past trigger? Am I responding to the reality of it or am I responding to a past reference point or some information I pulled from somewhere else? Am I responding to the reality or am I responding to my perception of the reality, my angle I'm looking at the reality from? And then all of a sudden you go, hey, wait a minute. I'm making a reaction based on a trigger, a perception, or some reference point instead of the facts. I'm making a reaction based on my emotional situation, either being best, worst, or average, instead of the facts. When you get back to the facts, most things aren't that complicated, aren't that hard, and really, truly aren't as bad as they sound. Like, people freak out over stuff. And in reality, not that big of a deal. You just got to deal with the facts instead of the trigger, the story, the perception, the state, and everything else that's coming with it. There's another example. Most people make judgments over the story they have about someone instead of the actual experience they have with someone. Or they make judgments about someone about the story they have about someone instead of their own experience with someone, because they hear what someone else's experience which in reality is rarely the person's actual experience with the person. It's the story the person created about the person. And so in reality, most of us, I just shared this on Facebook, there's this little group of kids who are playing phone, the telephone game where they pass along a message. And the beginning of the message starts out as, And the end of the message ends, ha. And there's like 50 kids in between, and all the kids are dying laughing because what the message started as, ended as, And the kids are like, oh my gosh. All it took is a handful of people, and all of a sudden the story fell apart and changed dramatically through the process. And so, this is a big piece to pay attention to in your life. I've learned if I want to be happy, I've got to make sure that whenever I catch myself reacting to something, I'm dealing with the facts of I was there. It's not a perception, it's the facts of what happened, and it's something I can tangibly deal with in the moment. When all of a sudden I'm dealing with a story of a story of a story of a story of a story, and then I'm separating that from a different perception, and then I'm not at my best self, and I'm dealing with past triggers of what happened, at that point, it's nonsense. Like, you've literally created something, and especially if you're suffering over it, if you're frustrated over it, if you're hurt or disappointed or upset over it, holy moly, you're allowing your emotions to be determined by the story of a story of a story of a perception of a trigger of a situation. Holy cow. Get back to the truth. Get back to reality, right here, right now. Most of us spend a lot of time trying to distract ourselves from reality instead of diving deep into reality, which is right frickin' in front of us all the time. So it sounds like the news. This is the news. Let's see. I have a question for you. Long story short, a negative experience at church. Now I walk into a church on guard and not loving. So here's the challenge. Are you reacting to the church that you're walking into, or are you reacting to the trigger of what you did in the past? What I'm seeing is you're reacting to the trigger of what you did in the past. I've walked into a lot of churches. I love going to church. It's amazing. You hear good people usually talking about good stuff in an attempt to mostly try to help people. Not always. I've walked into a few bad churches and listened to them and like, oh geez, that was not useful, and walk right back out. But most of them are genuinely trying to do pretty good things in the world. And so that concept of you're reacting to the trigger of what was back then, practice saying, okay, let me sit down, let me have an experience with what this congregation is doing, and let me realize, make sure I'm at my best self if I'm going to go through this, allow it to happen in the present moment. I'm going to stay incredibly present as this happens, and I'm going to experience what this feels like for the very first time right now. Bingo. All of a sudden you get a real, true, honest experience. Remember to then make a judgment based on the facts. This, here, the facts. That happened. And if you experience a fact and you're like, that ain't for me, move along. If you create a fact, if you experience a fact that is for you, stick with it. I'm a big fan of what works. If it works for you, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, move on. And I'm not a huge fan of people who spend time not realizing, and it's not their fault, they just don't have this concept. They're not thinking through it in this way. And the piece is, they're at their worst self. They make a judgment based on a past trigger of something that happened. They then get really hurt and frustrated and upset about it, and then they make it their point to then convince others of this, and then you watch it and you go, wow. Now people are making a judgment based on a story of a perception of a really worst case scenario when someone's totally in their shit worst self, who's now telling, it turns into a mess. And someone said, that sounds like the news. That is the news nowadays. It's no longer the facts of what's happening. It's the opinion of a person with a perception, with a situation, it's just layers deep. And therefore, I have a personal reference point. If I wasn't there, and I don't have in my best self a tangible experience with it, then I have no understanding and no opinion on what happened, because I wasn't there. I didn't experience it myself. I didn't do it from my best self, and therefore, how in the world would I actually know what went down? Just a thought. Thank you so much for your valuable time today and sharing these great insights and impacting my life as a total stranger. You're welcome, friend. You're very welcome. If you know someone who needs to listen and watch this, tag them in it, share it with them, and I hope you guys have an amazing Sunday. Talk to you guys later.